everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of the Knitty Heather podcast. My name is Heather, and I'm coming to you from Kent, Washington, where I live with my husband Tom and our Cavalier King Charles Spaniel Pepper. This is my podcast where I chat all about my knitting and everything I learn and discover along the way. I also love supporting makers that add to the beauty of our fiber world, whether they are yarn dyers, bag makers, progress keeper makers, any maker in our fiber community. If you are a new viewer, welcome. I am so happy that you found me. I hope you enjoy yourself. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really, truly appreciate it. If you would like to follow me, I am at Knitty Heather on Instagram, and I always love seeing what everyone is working on. All of the yarn, any accessories I talk about will be listed and linked in the description box below. Today is Saturday, May 1st, 2021, and I have a lot to tell you about today, so let's get started. Today I am wearing my Tesserino cowl. This is a pattern by Mari Chiba, and I also followed the tutorial by Stacy Perry of Very Pink Knits. She has a tutorial for this pattern that is really super fun. This is a 2-color mosaic knitting pattern, so it looks like stranded color work like Fair Isle, but it's not. It is mosaic, which means you only use one strand every round and then you slip the other color to create the color work. This has a really fun kind of geometric boxy design. Really fun. Perfect for 2 high contrast colors. I used Cascade 220. I'm not quite sure what the color numbers were anymore, but it was a charcoal gray and a very light pink. And I really love how it turned out. It was super fun to knit, and this type of knitting really goes very quickly because it's kind of addicting. I love mosaic knitting. This was the first project I think I ever did with mosaic knitting, and I've done a few others since then, but this is definitely one of my favorites. This is a worsted weight pattern, and because you are using 2 strands, it's sort of double thick, so it's a really nice warm cowl for the winter. Once again, this is the Tesserino cowl by Mari Chiba, knit up in Cascade 220. Today I am also wearing a pair of vanilla socks using the star-toed fleagle pattern by Stacy Perry of Very Pink Knits. This was my very first time knitting this pattern. The trickiest part was the pinhole cast on for the toe. The yarn I used was Premier Yarn Serenity Sock Prints in the colorway Violas. This is a very clearly written pattern that includes a video tutorial. It is a vanilla sock that features a star toe, a fleagle heel, and a 2x2 rib for the cuff. Now I would like to tell you about the last local yarn store I was able to visit when we were on our road trip to Cheyenne, Wyoming. We took a day trip over to Laramie, and it was a beautiful drive over from Cheyenne to Laramie, and I stopped in at Cowgirl Yarn. I was there when we were in Wyoming last October as well, and it is just a wonderful, beautiful shop. I talked to the owner, Lori, for a little bit, and she said that they were setting up their downstairs studio area, getting that all set up for classes again, which will be really exciting. So what I picked up there was a couple of skeins of Brooklyn tweed. This is Loft in the colorway Snowbound. This is a fingering weight, 275 yards. And the wool, it says, was sourced in Johnson County, Wyoming. So it was a little bit local, which was kind of cool. The other skein I got was Shelter. This is a worsted weight, and this colorway is called Fossil. I think my plan will maybe be to do a hat out of the worsted weight and maybe some fingerless mitts or gloves in the Loft. I think these will be, this is a little more rustic wool, so I think it will make for some nice, warm, small accessories for wintertime. Probably some fingerless mitts and a hat in these. We'll see what I come up with. Let me know if you have ever used either of these yarns. I know that I've heard about Brooklyn tweed for a very long time, but I never actually purchased any or really seen it in person, so this was very exciting to find this. Let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions for patterns for hats or fingerless gloves using these yarns. The last thing I picked up were a couple of sock sets from Sweet Mountain Yarns. out of Cody, Wyoming. This is the Time for Tea set with a little purple mini and some beautiful colors in the main skein. Lots of deep violets and burgundies and greens. And then this is the Winterberry set. So kind of a pink tonal for the main color and a variegated for the contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs. This is Winterberry. And this is Time for Tea. They had a bunch of cute little sock sets at Cowgirl Yarn from Sweet Mountain Yarns, and so I definitely had to pick up a couple. And I think they will maybe make some great gift socks in the future for some special people in my life. This is on her 80/20 Superwash Merino nylon base, and I'm looking forward to knitting these up into socks someday. This was Sweet Mountain Yarn, and if you ever happen to be in Laramie, Wyoming, I highly suggest checking out Cowgirl Yarn. She has a fantastic yarn shop with lots of selection and some beautiful, beautiful yarns. Now on to my finished objects. I have 2 socks to share with you today. This first pair is my Earth Day socks by Desert Vista Dyeworks. This was my April entry into the 7th annual Desert Vista Dyework monthly sock club. I used a green mini from one of her mini sets last year for the heels and toes. And then I just knit up. These are a little bit shorter. I did a 3x1 basic rib stitch inspired by the Basic Rib Socks by Kate Atherley. And so I just kind of bound off once I thought they would be a comfortable length. I did these toe up with a wedge toe. I knit them 2 at a time on magic loop, knit up the tube, and I didn't have to change the ribbing at all. For the cuff, I kind of maintained the 3x1 rib the whole way. I did it across the top of the foot and then around the whole leg. And then I went back and did my afterthought heel in the contrasting color as well. I lucked out with the stripes on the yarn, being able to put the contrasting heel right between these 2 teal stripes so that it pops a little bit more. I'm really liking how that looked. They matched up very nicely. I'm very happy with these. And I would highly recommend using a 3x1 rib if you want something just a little different than a vanilla sock. I haven't tried these on yet, but I am sure they will fit very, very snugly and nicely. And I'm looking forward to having these in my sock drawer as well to add to my sock collection. Here's kind of what the rib looks like. Really pretty greens and teals in this colorway, definitely very earthy. This was the Basic Rib Socks by Kate Atherley, knit up in Earth Day by Desert Vista Dyeworks. My next pair of socks I finished are my Paris socks. This is a pattern by Mina Phillip, the Knitting Expat. It was her April sock pattern from her newest sock club, Around the World in 8 Socks, inspired by the city of Paris. I knit these cuff down. I did 20 rounds of a special rib she has that leads into this kind of floral pattern. I did a German short row heel and then followed her instructions for the toe. The yarn I used is Lolo Did It, one of her Downton Abbey upstairs and downstairs sock sets. This light green is called Flower Show and the pink is called Trophy Rose. I think they worked out very well for kind of a florally pattern. And I did notice I made a little bit of a mistake. If you'll notice on this sock, I think this is the second one I did, there's a little bit of green that got eaten up into the flower. Whereas on my first sock, the flower started a little more cleanly in the pink. So I think on this first sock, what I did is I knit a straight round of stockinette, plain knitting, in once I changed to the pink color, but I neglected to do that on this second sock. You can't tell unless you're looking at it super closely. So I'm not really concerned, but a good reminder to myself to make notes of those kinds of little changes. And whenever you are transitioning colors, it is usually good to do a straight round of knitting so that there's a little more clean break. I kind of like this one where the flower starts more in the pink, whereas this one, the top part of it is still in the green. But again, you can only see that if you're looking at these super carefully, super closely, and I don't think anybody's going to be looking at these socks that closely. So I'm okay with that, but I will try to remember to be a little more careful when I do one sock at a time to be consistent between my first and second sock. But these are my Paris socks by Mina Phillip, knit up in Lolo Did It, Trophy Rose, and Garden Show. Now time for a quick update on my latest pair of socks by the Cozy Knitter. I get her Yarn of the Month Club, and this was her February colorway. I almost have a half finished object. This colorway is called Let's Calibrate, and she sent 3 little 10-gram minis with it. And it's kind of this gradient gray color, super fun, super different, and very pretty. So I did the toe in this red color. I did a Fish Lips Kiss Heel in this blue color. And I just did my first round of plain knitting in this green color. So now that I've done this plain round of knitting for a clean break, I will start to do probably 10 to 12 rounds of a 2x2 rib before I do my simple stretchy bind off. And then this first pair will be done. I have it in my Bumblebee bag by MLD Threads on Etsy. My Lady Progress Keeper is from Fangirl Fibers on Etsy. And I'm really enjoying these. I am doing these on my 9-inch circulars ChiaoGoo red lace. And I haven't done 9-inch circulars for a while, and it's kind of refreshing. You really can knit things up quite quickly with 9-inch circulars. They take a few rounds to get used to, but once you kind of get the flow, they are very efficient, and you don't get any ladders between, like you do with magic loop sometimes, between the two needles. So I do like 9-inch circulars every so often. I was glad to be using these for this pair of socks. This is still just my first, so I need to finish the cuff on this and cast on my second. I'd love to have these done as soon as possible. And I really love this bright green. I think this will be fun to add as the cuff, kind of a little bit different. This is just a plain vanilla sock knit on 9-inch circulars with the Fish Lips Kiss Heel, knit up in the Cozy Knitter Let's Calibrate. Next up is my latest pair of socks from my Yarnable subscription by Hypnotic Yarn. This is her March colorway. It is called Celtic Fairy. A very pretty twisted stitch that kind of gives it the effect of a cable, but there isn't any actual cabling going on. This Shamrock Progress Keeper is from Sam's Tiny Trinkets on Etsy. And I have it in my Wizard of Oz bag from Donna's Design Shop on Etsy. Here's what the colorway looks like in the cake. Super pretty, lots of beautiful tones of blues and greens with a little hint of black throughout. The pattern I am doing is called Kaye Cables, and it's by Sierra of All Knit Up Designs. I've done the leg, and then I just finished the heel flap and turn. I've picked up the gusset stitches, and now I'm working back in the round at decreasing the gusset stitches. She had you do an Eye of Partridge heel flap, which looks really pretty. And so like I said, now I'm going to decrease the gusset stitches. I will maintain the stitch pattern across the instep of the foot, but then just do stockinette on the bottom of the foot. I really think this is knitting up very pretty. It's a super fun pattern that would go well with almost any yarn. This is just my first sock, so I do need to finish the gusset and then continue down the foot and close up the toe. I think I will do the wedge toe that she calls for in the pattern, and then I'll need to cast on sock number 2. This is Kaye Cables by All Knit Up Designs, knit up in Celtic Fairy by Hypnotic Yarn from her Yarnable subscription box. Next, I'd like to tell you about my pair of sleeping socks that I have been working on. I am on sock number 2 with this one, and I have only done the cuff. I did 12 rounds of a 2x2 rib. This sheep progress keeper is from Simply Serving on Etsy. I have it in my sheep bag from April 9 Designs on Etsy, and I'm using a sheep progress keeper as a zipper pull. This is from Bump on a Hill on Etsy. This colorway is called Oil Slick, and it is from Trilogy Yarns, Nancy out of Spokane. And so I did do the cuff. I did 12 rounds of a 2x2 rib. This is her Superwash Merino worsted base, which is very squishy, very beautiful, super soft. And so now I will start knitting down the leg. The pattern I'm following is the Learn to Knit Socks pattern by Stacey Perry of Very Pink Knits. It is a perfect beginning worsted weight classic heel flap and gusset sock design, and it's kind of my go-to pattern for sleeping socks, very comfortable worsted weight sleeping socks. So she has all kinds of beautiful colors in this colorway. I really love how it is knitting up. This is sock number 2, so I'm very anxious to finish this up and have the pair done. This is the Learn to Knit Socks pattern by Stacey Perry of Very Pink Knits, knit up in Oil Slick by Trilogy Yarns. Next, I'd like to tell you about my Monet Shawl. I finally got back into working on this shawl. This is a design by Melina of Rye Flower Knits. I am using my 2020 Christmas Advent from Hypnotic Yarn with all these beautiful tonal colors. The first section was kind of this ribbed section in the gray, and then it went on to kind of a lacy section in this purple color. And now I am doing a bunch of stripes in the rest of the minis that came from her set. This was a 24 mini set. And I just finished using the 5th mini, this kind of orange stripe. The main section that I am working on with all these stripes kind of has a little cable and some lace, very beautiful. I love how all these colors are coming together. You do need a cable needle. I have this in my Forest Creature bag by Bags by Awesome Granny, which is the perfect size for a shawl like this. My Fruit Tart Progress Keeper is from Charms by Charlie. And I'm kind of just using this watermelon stitch marker to mark the halfway point. That way I know that I'm kind of on track. I really need to probably start putting some stitch markers between the pattern repeats now, because I'm getting a lot more stitches on the needles. Speaking of needles, these are my Addi Turbo Lace. I had been using my Knitter's Pride Ginger, but look what happened. Somehow these needles broke. I'm not quite sure when or how that happened, but thank goodness I didn't lose any stitches. So I switched to these fixed Addi Turbo Lace needles, which will work just fine as well. So I'm continuing with these stripes. The first 2 stripes are thicker because of the size that I am doing. I am doing the medium size of this pattern. And because of the number of repeats you needed to do with this stripe pattern, it worked out that these first 2 I did twice, and now the rest of them will just be 1 repeat, and they'll be the size that this orange one is in. The next color I will be using is kind of this pretty aquamarine color, and so I'll add that as my next stripe. I'm not really giving myself a timeline to have this done. I am enjoying working on it. But we'll just see. I don't really want to put any pressure on myself. We'll see how long it takes me to finish up, but I am hoping to add at least one stripe every week or so, just to kind of keep making progress with it. This is the Monet Shawl by Melina of Rye Flower Knits, knit up in the 2020 Advent calendar from Hypnotic Yarn. Next, I'd like to tell you about a little bit of progress I've made on my Rings of Life hat. This is from the Hat of the Month Club by Makers Mercantile here in Kent, and it was written by the design team from Makers Mercantile. I'm using my 16-inch Knitter's Pride Royale needles. My stitch marker is from Bump on a Hill, and my progress keeper is an orange cranberry scone from Simply Surfing on Etsy. It is being housed in my retro Disney bag from Bags by Awesome Granny. And as you can see, I've incorporated this green color. I did the first stripe in the green, and then I just finished this stripe in the brown. The yarn I'm using is called Simply Crea, and it's by Haiku. This brown color is called Chocolate Mousse. This green color is called Lemongrass. And there will also be this tan color incorporated called Shifting Sand. This has been an absolute pleasure to knit. This Simply Crea is 100% baby alpaca, so it is super soft. And it's also this chainette construction, which is really fun. I've never really worked, I don't think, with a yarn that has this chainette construction. So that has been really fun and interesting to use. I will keep adding stripes to this hat according to the pattern, and then there's a special way that they want you to close it up and some kind of fun detail at the crown of the hat, which I will talk about when I get there. But this is my Rings of Life hat by the design team from Makers Mercantile, knit up in Simply Crea by Haiku. This was their March Hat of the Month Club kit. Last but not least, I would love to tell you about the progress I've been making on my Granny Ripple blanket. This is one of the scrappy projects that I have been working on, and I am following the pattern by Stacey Perry of Very Pink Knits. It is part of her Crochet for Knitters collection. Really fun blanket pattern. And these last few colors I've added are from Jennifer of Clark and Elle, her springtime Advent minis. She is doing quarterly Advent minis again this year, and I purchased my set on her worsted base, which I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with. That is the weight of yarn I am using with this scrappy project, anything kind of worsted or chunky. So these last few colors have been really pretty, really springy. This is the color I am adding in right now with these beautiful green speckles. Very soft, very understated, very warm. Really enjoying adding these. I am using this clippy stitch marker to save my stitch so I know where I am at exactly. And since I last talked about this project, I have worked up since this cherry progress keeper right here. So I've done a few more rows. This is a pretty wide blanket. It fits on top of a queen size bed. And I think I'm going to add all of her minis in a row. I get to open one up every week throughout the spring. And I'm just gonna add one every week. This green speckled color that I'm currently working through, I opened last week, and I'm hoping to open the next one tomorrow. So hopefully I'll be able to finish this up. It doesn't take too long to use up 20 grams of a worsted weight yarn in a project like this. And I'm getting a little bit over a stripe in each color. And I've really been enjoying adding these springtime advent colors to my Granny Ripple blanket. Again, this is the Granny Ripple blanket by Stacey Perry of Very Pink Knits. And I'm currently adding the springtime advents from Clark and Elle on her worsted base. Well, I think that's about all I have for you this episode. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it. Please give this video a like and consider subscribing. That would mean so much to me. As always, let me know your thoughts about the podcast and what you are working on or any questions you may have. You can leave a comment down below or leave me a message on Instagram. I am at Knitty Heather on Instagram and I would love to hear from you. Until next time, be well, be kind, and happy knitting. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.